Poor cowboy, win my revenge, and I'll be your wife until the end of time." Birds chirped in the distance, and the morning air smelled of dry grass and earth warmed by the early light. Clara wiped her hands on her apron as she looked over the fields behind her family's modest farmhouse. Her farm was not large and life was not easy, but she had grown up learning the value of hard work and honesty. Every morning began with chores, feeding the chickens, tending the garden, and checking the animals. She often thought about her father, who had passed away when she was young, leaving her mother to manage the farm and care for her and her younger brother. Clara had learned early that she had to be strong, not only for herself but for her family. Despite the hardships, Clara was a young woman full of energy and courage. She loved reading the few books her mother could afford, dreaming of places she had never seen. She often imagined herself riding across wide-open plains, feeling the wind in her hair, and discovering a life beyond Dusty Creek. But reality was different, and she had to face the daily struggles of farm life, the harsh sun, and the occasional cruel words from neighbors who looked down on her family for their modest means. On that particular morning, Clara noticed movement at the edge of the farm. A young cowboy was walking carefully along the fence, his horse trailing behind him. His name was Jake, and though he had traveled from town to town, seeking honest work, he had never found a place to belong. His clothes were worn, and his boots carried the dust of many trails, but his eyes were steady and thoughtful. He had learned to survive by keeping to himself and observing the world carefully. There was a quiet strength about him, a calm that people often mistook for weakness, but in truth, he had faced hardships that had made him resilient and wise beyond his years. Jake had heard about Dusty Creek during his travels. Stories of small farms struggling against bandits and thieves had reached him, and he had hoped to find work helping those who needed protection. He believed in fairness and justice, and though life had taught him caution, he was willing to step in when he saw someone in danger. Clara saw the cowboy pause at the fence, looking around cautiously. At first, she thought he might be a stranger with bad intentions, but something about the way he carried himself gave her a sense of trust. Before she could say anything, a commotion broke out near the barn. A gang of thieves had come under the cover of early morning shadows, attempting to steal livestock from her family. Panic surged through her as she saw one of the men trying to untie a horse, while another grabbed a sack of eggs. Clara knew she could not fight them alone. She ran toward the nearest thief, waving her arms and shouting for him to stop. To her surprise, Jake acted quickly. With calm efficiency, he moved between the thieves and the animals, his hands steady as he grabbed the nearest man by the arm and pushed him away from the horse. Clara felt a sudden surge of hope as she realized this stranger was on her side. Together, they managed to chase off the gang, scaring them back toward the road with firm shouts and clever tricks. The thieves, not expecting resistance, ran, leaving behind the stolen goods and a trail of dust. When the dust settled, Clara stood panting, her hands trembling from the adrenaline. Jake leaned against the fence, catching his breath, and looked at her with a mixture of amusement and respect. "You're quick," he said softly. "Not many would run straight at them." Clara smiled, her heart still racing. "And not many would fight to protect someone else's farm," she replied. She felt an unexpected connection with Jake, a sense that he understood the world she lived in, a world that demanded courage and cleverness to survive. For the next few days, Jake stayed near the farm, helping Clara repair the damage caused by the thieves. They worked side by side, mending fences, feeding animals, and securing the barn. Each day, they shared stories of their lives. Clara told him about her family, the struggles they faced after her father's death, and her dream of making the farm thrive despite the challenges. Jake shared tales of his travels, of lonely nights under starlit skies, and of towns where he had tried to find work but often found trouble instead. As they worked together, Clara began to notice the quiet strength in Jake's character. He did not speak much about himself, but his actions showed kindness, patience, and an unwavering sense of justice. He never judged her for being young and inexperienced, and he treated every task with care and thoughtfulness. Clara felt drawn to him, not just for his bravery in fighting the thieves, but for the way he made her feel understood and respected. Yet, beneath Clara's growing admiration for Jake, a darker feeling stirred. Memories of her family's suffering and the injustice done to them by a wealthy landowner named Marcus gnawed at her heart. Marcus had seized a large portion of her father's land before he died, leaving the family struggling to survive. Clara had grown up with anger and a desire for justice, and she realized that while Jake's help was a blessing, she could not forget the wrongs done to her family. She began to see Jake as someone who might help her achieve what she had long dreamed of, revenge against Marcus. At the same time, Jake noticed something in Clara that few people did. Beneath her gentle exterior was a fiery determination. She was not the helpless girl some townspeople might have assumed. She had intelligence, courage, and a sharp mind capable of planning and thinking ahead. Jake found himself respecting her even more, sensing that she could handle challenges that most people would run from. The days passed, and Dusty Creek slowly returned to its normal rhythm. Clara and Jake continued their routine, and with each passing day, their bond strengthened. They shared laughter and small moments of joy amidst the hard work. Jake taught Clara a few tricks for handling the horses more efficiently, while she shared her knowledge of the land and crops with him. Together, they began to feel like a team, facing the world's challenges side by side. One evening, as the sun dipped low behind the hills, casting long shadows across the farm, Clara and Jake sat on the porch, watching the sky change colors. Clara felt a mixture of emotions: gratitude for Jake's help, admiration for his character, and a deep, unspoken connection that neither had yet fully acknowledged. She knew that their paths had crossed for a reason, even if she was not yet ready to admit all of her motives. "I never thought I'd meet someone like you," Clara said quietly, breaking the comfortable silence. "Someone who doesn't just see the farm or the work, but sees the person behind it." Jake looked at her, his eyes steady. "And I never thought I'd find a place where I feel needed, Clara. You've made me realize that life doesn't have to be just about surviving. Sometimes it can be about helping, protecting, and caring for someone." They sat in silence after that, each lost in their thoughts. The bond between them had grown stronger, but the shadow of Clara's desire for revenge still lingered, and Jake could sense that her mind carried burdens she had yet to share. That night, as stars sparkled in the clear sky above Dusty Creek, Clara lay awake thinking about the journey ahead. She knew that Marcus was still out there, ruling over his land with cruelty and arrogance. She knew that if she wanted justice, she would need help, and she had begun to see that Jake might be the ally she needed. But she also realized that helping her might change him, and perhaps even change her own heart in ways she could not yet predict. Jake, meanwhile, stared at the same stars from his small corner of the farm. He thought about Clara, her strength, her kindness, and the quiet determination in her eyes. He had seen enough of the world to know that life could be cruel, but he also knew that people like Clara made life worth fighting for. And so, in the quiet of Dusty Creek, two lives began to intertwine. One carried the weight of past injustices and a desire for revenge. The other carried the strength of courage, patience, and loyalty. Together, they would face the challenges of the world, unaware that their paths were about to lead them into a journey of danger, trust, and the possibility of love, an adventure that would test them in ways neither of them could yet imagine. After the events at the farm, Clara could not stop thinking about Marcus, the man who had ruined her family's life. Even now, months after her father's death, the pain and anger still ran deep. She remembered the day Marcus had claimed part of her father's land, using clever words, false promises, and threats. Her family had tried to fight back, but they were no match for his wealth and influence. The farm had survived barely, but the wounds were still fresh. Every day, Clara felt a burning desire for justice, or perhaps, more accurately, revenge. She wanted to see Marcus lose the power he had used to harm her family. Yet, Clara knew she could not do this alone. Marcus had men who obeyed him without question, guards who would not hesitate to defend his wealth, and connections in town that could ruin anyone who tried to oppose him. She needed someone strong, clever, and brave. Her thoughts returned to Jake, the cowboy who had helped her defend the farm from thieves. He was not just strong, he was fearless, calm under pressure, and resourceful. But more than that, he had a heart that cared for others and a sense of fairness that was rare in the world. Clara spent several nights planning in secret. She studied the farm records, Marcus's property, and the surrounding lands. She made sketches of fences, barns, and paths, noting where guards might be and how best to approach. As she worked, her mind wandered to Jake. She realized that if she asked him for help, it would not only be risky, it could also bind him to her cause in a way he might not fully understand. She wrestled with her feelings, knowing that she cared for him more than she wanted to admit, but she could not let that distract her from her plan. The next morning, she walked to the barn where Jake was tending to the horses. The sunlight streamed through the wooden slats, casting long shadows across the ground. "Jake," she called softly, "I need to talk to you about something important." Jake looked up from brushing a horse, his eyes calm and attentive. "What is it, Clara?" he asked. Clara took a deep breath. "It's about Marcus," she said. "The man who took my family's land. I want to make things right. I want to take back what is ours, and I need your help." Jake's expression did not change immediately. He set the brush down and walked closer. "Revenge can be dangerous, Clara," he said quietly. "It can consume people. Are you sure this is what you want?" Clara's eyes flashed with determination. "I'm not asking for myself," she said firmly. "I'm asking for my family. And I think you're the only person who can help me." Jake considered her words carefully. He had seen her courage, her intelligence, and her careful planning. He knew that she was serious, and he knew that she would not take risks lightly. Still, he felt the weight of responsibility. "If we do this," he said slowly, "we have to be smart. Every step must be planned. We can't rush, and we can't underestimate Marcus. He's dangerous and clever." Clara nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and excitement. "I've already thought of that. I have sketches, plans, and ideas, but I can't do it alone. You have the skill, the courage, and the ability to act when it matters most." Over the next few days, they began working in secret. Clara shared her plans, pointing out weaknesses in Marcus's estate, schedules of his guards, and the routes his men took to deliver supplies. Jake listened carefully, asking questions, offering suggestions, and testing the plans with logic and practicality. Their teamwork grew naturally, and as they worked together, trust deepened between them. Each plan required patience, observation, and careful timing, and they both learned to rely on the other's strengths. While preparing for the plan, they also spent quiet moments together, talking about their lives, dreams, and fears. Clara shared stories of her childhood, the memories of her father, and the struggles of running a farm with limited resources. Jake spoke of his travels, the towns he had passed through, and the challenges of being a wandering cowboy. They laughed at small things, like the stubborn behavior of horses or the strange ways neighbors behaved, but beneath the laughter, a bond was forming. A bond of respect, understanding, and something more, something neither of them wanted to admit just yet. Despite the growing connection, Clara's mind always returned to revenge. Every plan they made was focused on Marcus, every discussion a step toward reclaiming what she believed was rightfully hers. She knew that her feelings for Jake were complicated. She admired him, respected him, and perhaps even loved him, but she also knew that he was her key to achieving justice. She promised herself that once Marcus was dealt with, she could allow herself to consider her own heart. One evening, as the sun dipped low, casting long shadows over the farm, Clara and Jake were reviewing the latest plans. Clara had drawn a map showing the layout of Marcus's estate, including secret paths, hidden fences, and the location of his guards. "If we approach from this side," she explained, pointing to the map, "we can avoid most of the men and reach the barn without being seen. But we'll need to act quickly and quietly. One mistake and the whole plan could fail." Jake nodded, studying the map with careful eyes. "We'll need a distraction," he said thoughtfully. "Something that will draw attention away from us. Maybe a fire or a loud noise, something small but enough to pull the guards away for a few minutes." Clara's eyes brightened. "Yes, that could work. And if we time it right, we can get inside, secure what we need, and leave before anyone notices." But she hesitated, thinking about the risks. "It's dangerous, Jake. If anything goes wrong—" Jake reached out, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We'll make it work, Clara. We'll plan carefully, watch every step, and trust each other. We can do this together." For the first time, Clara felt a sense of calm. She knew that with Jake by her side, her plan had a chance to succeed. And as she looked at him, she realized that she was beginning to see him not just as an ally, but as someone who mattered deeply to her, someone she could depend on, someone who understood her courage and her pain. The days that followed were filled with preparation. They gathered supplies, practiced their movements, and observed Marcus's estate from a distance. Clara noted every detail, from the timing of the guards, patrols to the way the wind moved across the fields, affecting sound and visibility. Jake taught her how to move silently, how to read the land, and how to remain calm under pressure. Together, they became a well-coordinated team, each step bringing them closer to their goal. As they worked, Clara noticed that Jake's presence was more than helpful, it was comforting. She no longer felt alone in her mission. She felt someone beside her who shared her determination, someone who would protect her if danger came. And yet she still kept her feelings guarded, knowing that their plan had to come first. Love, she reminded herself, would have to wait until after revenge was achieved. One afternoon, as they rested near a small creek, Jake turned to her with a serious expression. "Clara," he said, "I need to know something. If we do this, are you sure this is about justice and not anger alone? Revenge can change people. It can make them cruel even when they think they are right." Clara looked into his eyes, feeling the weight of his words. She had not expected him to see so clearly. "It's both," she admitted softly. "I am angry, yes, but it's also about fairness, about standing up for my family. I want Marcus to pay for what he did. But I also want to do it the right way, with planning, courage, and strength, like you said. Not by hurting innocent people, not by becoming someone I don't want to be." Jake nodded, seeming satisfied with her answer. "Then we'll do it carefully, and we'll do it together. No one else knows shortcuts, just us, planning, watching, and acting when the time is right." Clara felt a mixture of relief and warmth. She realized that Jake was not just an ally. He was someone who could be trusted with her deepest plans, her fears, and perhaps one day her heart. But for now, their mission was clear, and they could not allow anything to distract them. Night after night, they continued to plan, moving quietly around the farm, studying the maps, and preparing for the moment when they would confront Marcus. The air was often filled with tension, but also with a growing sense of partnership. Each day they learned more about each other, sharing moments of laughter, concern, and mutual respect. And so, in the quiet town of Dusty Creek, two lives became intertwined not only by a shared desire for justice, but also by a deepening connection that neither fully understood yet. Clara's anger burned strong, but with Jake by her side, it became a force guided by wisdom, courage, and planning. Together, they were ready to face the challenges ahead, unaware that their mission would test not only their skill and courage, but also the strength of their hearts. The morning sun rose slowly over Dusty Creek, casting a soft golden light on the farm. Clara and Jake had spent the night reviewing their plans one last time. Their preparation was meticulous, but they both knew that even the best-laid plans could go wrong. Today, they would begin the journey toward Marcus's estate, a journey filled with danger, strategy, and unknown challenges. Clara packed supplies carefully into a small bag: rope, lanterns, maps, and a few provisions for the long journey. Her heart raced with a mixture of excitement and fear. She knew that the path ahead would test them in ways they could not yet imagine. Jake, as always, was calm. He checked the horses, adjusted their saddles, and ensured that everything they might need was ready. His steady presence gave Clara a sense of confidence. She trusted him more than anyone else she had ever known, and she knew that they would need that trust if they were to succeed. As they left the farm, the familiar landscape of Dusty Creek slowly disappeared behind them. The open plains stretched ahead, dotted with rolling hills, dry grass, and occasional clusters of trees. The journey required careful observation. They moved quietly, avoiding main roads and towns where Marcus's men might be stationed. Every rustle of wind, every distant sound, could signal danger. Clara's heart beat fast, but Jake's calmness reminded her to stay focused. He had taught her to notice subtle signs in the environment: the direction of footprints, the movement of birds, and the sound of distant voices. After several hours, they paused near a small creek to rest and plan their next move. Clara took the moment to study the map again, tracing the paths with her finger. "We'll need to cross the hill at sunrise," she said. "It will give us a clear view of Marcus's land, and we can see the guards' patrols before they see us." Jake nodded. "Good thinking. And we'll need to keep the horses hidden. If they spot the animals too early, the guards will be on us immediately. Timing is everything." Clara felt a thrill of anticipation. The plan was risky, but it was their only chance to confront Marcus and reclaim what was hers. She looked at Jake, noticing the focus in his eyes and the way he moved with quiet confidence. She realized that she had never felt this way before. She respected him deeply, and somewhere in her heart, she knew she cared for him in ways she had yet to admit. That night they camped under the stars. The sky was clear and the air was cool and crisp. They shared a small meal by the fire, and for a brief moment, the weight of their mission seemed to lift. Clara laughed softly at a story Jake told about a town where he had accidentally scared the mayor's prized cow into a river. Jake laughed too, his voice low and warm. In that simple moment, Clara felt a sense of normalcy, a glimpse of peace amidst the tension of their journey. But the calm did not last long. As dawn approached, they prepared to move again. Clara could see Marcus's estate in the distance, a sprawling property with fences, barns, and several outbuildings. Guards patrolled the perimeter, moving in predictable patterns. Clara's careful observation allowed them to plan a route that would avoid the main paths and reach the barn where Marcus kept his most valuable possessions. The journey to the estate was challenging. They had to navigate rough terrain, climb hills, and cross streams quietly. At one point, a sudden gust of wind caused a tree branch to snap, and Clara's heart jumped. Jake's hand rested briefly on her shoulder, steadying her. "Stay calm," he whispered. "We move slowly and we'll be fine." Clara followed his advice, taking slow, deliberate steps. She noticed the way he surveyed the area, always alert, always aware. She realized that Jake's calmness was not just bravery, it was skill, honed by years of experience. And she felt grateful that he was with her, guiding her, supporting her, and protecting her in ways she could not do alone. As they approached the edge of Marcus's property, they paused behind a cluster of bushes to observe the guards. There were 3 men patrolling the main barn, and another near the front gate. Clara whispered her plan to Jake, outlining the timing and movements they would use to avoid detection. Jake nodded, adding a few suggestions of his own small adjustments that would make their approach safer and more effective. With careful precision, they moved closer. Clara's heart raced with every step, but Jake's steady presence kept her focused. They slipped past the first patrol, crouching low and moving silently through the tall grass. At one point, a dog barked in the distance, and Clara froze, her breath catching in her throat. Jake signaled her to stay calm. They waited until the barking faded, then continued, inching closer to the barn. Finally, they reached the edge of the barn. Clara's plan called for a distraction, a small fire near the haystack on the opposite side of the property, which would draw the guards away for just long enough to give them access to the barn. Jake lit the fire carefully, ensuring that it would be noticeable but controlled. Smoke began to rise, and almost immediately, 2 guards ran toward it, shouting and waving their arms. Clara and Jake moved quickly, slipping into the barn and securing the doors behind them. Inside, the barn was filled with supplies, tools, and several crates of valuable goods. Clara's eyes searched for the items she had identified as belonging to her family. She found them carefully stacked in a corner, each marked with symbols only she would recognize. Relief washed over her. This part of the plan was working. As they gathered the items, they heard footsteps approaching. Clara's heart pounded. Jake motioned for her to stay quiet. A guard entered the barn, his eyes scanning the interior. Jake stepped forward silently, grabbing the man's arm and pulling him behind a stack of crates. The guard struggled, but Jake's strength and control allowed them to remain hidden. Clara held her breath, realizing that every moment was a test of their courage, skill, and trust in each other. After what felt like an eternity, the guard left, confused by the noise outside. Clara and Jake exchanged a quick glance, a mixture of relief and excitement. They had made it this far without being caught, and their teamwork had been perfect. But they both knew that the hardest part was not over. They had to exit the property safely and return home with the stolen goods intact. They moved carefully toward the back of the barn, where a small path led out of the property. Clara led the way, with Jake close behind. The fire outside continued to distract the remaining guards, allowing them to slip past unnoticed. As they reached the edge of the estate, Clara looked back one last time. Marcus's manor loomed in the distance, and for the first time she felt a sense of victory. They had succeeded in this stage of the plan, but the journey was far from over. On the way back, they rode in silence, each lost in thought. Clara's mind was filled with a mixture of triumph, fear, and gratitude. She realized that without Jake's calmness, strength, and careful thinking, the plan would have failed. She felt a deep sense of connection to him, a feeling she could not yet put into words. Jake, too, was thoughtful. He had seen Clara's courage and cleverness firsthand. He had witnessed her determination and the way she faced danger without hesitation. He knew that she was remarkable, someone who could not be underestimated. And he felt a growing respect and affection for her, though he kept it quiet, knowing that their mission required focus above all else. As they neared Dusty Creek, the familiar landscape welcomed them. The farm came into view, and Clara felt a surge of relief and pride. They had faced danger together, executed a risky plan, and succeeded. But she also knew that this was only the beginning. Marcus would not take this loss lightly, and their next steps would be even more challenging. That night under the stars, Clara and Jake celebrated quietly. They shared a small meal, laughter, and stories of the day. Clara felt a sense of peace, knowing that they had accomplished something incredible together. But she also felt a quiet tension, the knowledge that their journey was far from over, and that the challenges ahead would test them in ways they could not yet imagine. As they prepared to rest, Clara reflected on the day's events. She realized that her feelings for Jake were changing. He was no longer just an ally, he was a partner, someone who had stood by her in the most dangerous moments, someone she could trust with her life. And though she kept her thoughts private, she felt a small hope in her heart that this partnership might grow into something more. Jake lay awake beside the small fire, thinking about Clara. He admired her courage, intelligence, and determination. He had seen how carefully she planned, how bravely she faced danger, and how deeply she cared for her family. He felt a growing admiration and affection for her, though he kept it hidden, knowing that their mission required focus and discipline. And so, under the quiet night sky, two people who had once been strangers found themselves connected by a shared purpose, trust, and a growing bond. They had faced danger, relied on each other, and succeeded in a daring plan. But their journey was far from over. Ahead lay even greater challenges, tests of courage, and moments that would shape not only their mission, but the path of their hearts. Clara and Jake had returned to Dusty Creek, their hearts still pounding from the daring journey to Marcus's estate. They had succeeded in reclaiming part of what was lost, but both knew that the final confrontation with Marcus was inevitable. The stolen goods and reclaimed property were only the beginning. Marcus was a clever and ruthless man, and he would not accept defeat easily. Clara's determination burned brighter than ever, fueled by months of planning, courage, and the knowledge that justice, or perhaps revenge, was within her grasp. The next morning, Clara and Jake began preparing for the decisive day. They reviewed every detail of the plan once more. Marcus's estate had several entrances, and they knew they had to act with precision to avoid his guards. Jake suggested that they split roles. Clara would lead the approach through a hidden path she had discovered, while he would create a diversion on the opposite side. They practiced movements, discussed contingencies, and visualized every step in their minds. The tension was heavy, but the focus they shared made it manageable. Clara felt a mixture of fear and excitement. Her mind flashed back to the day Marcus had seized her family's land, his cruel smile and arrogant words. That memory fueled her determination. She knew she wanted justice, and she knew that she wanted Marcus to see the strength and cleverness of those he had underestimated. And yet beneath the anger, a small part of her heart had begun to think of Jake, not as a partner in revenge alone, but as someone she truly cared for. She pushed the thought aside, focusing on the task ahead. The day was clear, with a soft breeze moving across the fields. Clara and Jake moved carefully toward Marcus's estate, using the knowledge they had gained from their previous visit. Clara led Jake through the hidden path, avoiding patrols, fences, and open spaces. Her heart beat fast, not only from the adrenaline but also from the awareness that this was the moment they had been preparing for. Jake followed closely, ready to act as needed. He had complete trust in Clara's judgment, and he knew that her careful planning made this mission possible. Yet he remained alert, aware that any small mistake could put them both in danger. Every rustle of leaves, every shadow, was a potential threat. They communicated silently with subtle gestures, moving like a single unit, perfectly synchronized in their approach. As they neared the main barn, they paused to observe. Marcus's men were stationed more heavily than before, clearly suspicious after the previous loss. Clara's eyes scanned every corner, every guard, noting shifts, patrols, and possible distractions. Jake leaned close and whispered, "We'll need something bigger this time. The smoke alone won't work. We need a plan that draws them all out without putting us in direct danger." Clara nodded. "I've thought about that. There's a stack of hay near the northern fence. If we ignite it carefully, it will create smoke and noise. The guards will rush to that side, leaving the barn less protected." She paused, taking a deep breath. "We have only one chance to do this right." Jake placed a hand on her shoulder, steadying her. "Then we do it together, trust each other, and nothing will go wrong." They waited until the afternoon, when the sun was high and the shadows provided cover. Clara set the diversion in motion, igniting the hay with precise timing. Smoke rose quickly, curling into the sky. Almost immediately, the guards began rushing toward the disturbance, shouting orders and confusion spreading among them. Jake and Clara moved swiftly toward the barn, slipping inside before anyone could notice. Inside, the barn was dim and dusty, filled with tools, crates, and supplies. Clara's eyes quickly found the items she had come for: documents, deeds, and evidence of Marcus's illegal actions. She gathered them carefully, ensuring they would be enough to reclaim her family's land permanently. Jake stood near the doorway, keeping watch, alert for any approaching danger. As they worked, a sound outside made Clara freeze. Footsteps heavier, slower than those of the distracted guards. Marcus himself had returned, sensing the disturbance. Clara's heart pounded. She looked at Jake, who nodded, ready to act. They could not hide this time. Confrontation was inevitable. Marcus entered the barn, his eyes narrowing as he saw the two intruders. "So this is what you've been planning," he said, his voice cold and sharp. "You think you can take what's mine?" Clara stood tall, despite the fear rising in her chest. "No, Marcus," she said firmly. "This is what is ours. You took from my family and now it ends. We are here to reclaim what you stole, and there's nothing you can do to stop it." Marcus laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "Brave words from a girl and a wandering cowboy. Do you really think you can defeat me?" Jake stepped forward, his hand resting on a wooden post for balance, his voice steady. "We're not here to fight you without reason, Marcus, but we will defend ourselves, and we will take back what belongs to Clara's family. It's over for you." The tension in the barn was thick. Marcus, angry and surprised by Clara's courage, reached for a small weapon hidden behind him. Jake reacted instantly, using his speed and strength to block Marcus's movement. The struggle was brief but intense. Clara grabbed the deeds and documents, holding them close. She knew that these papers were the key to her family's justice. Marcus, realizing he was outmatched in strategy and surprise, attempted to call his guards back. But the chaos outside, the fire, the smoke, the confusion, had delayed their return. Clara and Jake had the advantage, and they used it wisely. With careful planning, they cornered Marcus, ensuring he could not escape until the authorities could be called upon or the evidence could be delivered to those who could enforce justice. Clara felt a mixture of triumph and relief. After years of planning, after months of preparation, justice had been achieved. Marcus could no longer control her family's land or intimidate the townspeople. He had been outsmarted, and the truth of his wrongdoings was now secure. As the adrenaline faded, Clara looked at Jake, feeling something she had not allowed herself to feel fully until now. "We did it," she whispered, her voice soft but full of emotion. "I couldn't have done it without you." Jake smiled, a rare warmth in his eyes. "You led us, Clara. You planned this. I just helped make sure it worked. You were brave every step of the way." For a long moment they stood in the barn, catching their breath. The danger had passed and the thrill of victory filled the air. Clara realized that Jake's presence had been more than a support. It had been essential. She felt gratitude, admiration, and something deeper, a connection that had grown stronger with every challenge they had faced together. As they left the barn, carrying the evidence and reclaiming what was rightfully hers, Clara felt a new sense of freedom. Marcus's threat had ended, and with it, the shadow over her family was lifted. She looked at Jake, her heart full. "You promised to help me," she said softly, "but I think I also promised myself that I'd never face anything like this alone again." Jake reached for her hand, his grip steady and reassuring. "And you won't," he said quietly. "I'll stand by you, Clara. Not because of plans or promises, but because you've earned it and because I want to." In that moment, the weight of the past months, the fear, the planning, the danger, seemed to lift. Clara realized that revenge had brought them together, but something more powerful had grown: trust, respect, and love. The mission had been successful, but the journey of their hearts was just beginning. They returned to Dusty Creek slowly, ensuring that everything they had reclaimed was safe. The townspeople, who had once doubted Clara's family, now looked upon her with respect. Word spread of her courage and cleverness, and of the mysterious cowboy who had helped her achieve what many thought impossible. Clara felt pride, not just in the victory, but in the person she had become, strong, determined, and capable. And through it all, Jake remained by her side, not as a protector, not just as a helper, but as someone who had shared in her struggle and her triumph. Clara realized that the bond they had formed, through danger, planning, and trust, was stronger than she had ever imagined. It was a connection that went beyond mission or revenge. It was the start of something lasting. That night, under a sky filled with stars, Clara and Jake sat quietly by a small fire, the evidence and reclaimed deeds safely packed away. Clara's heart was full of gratitude, relief, and a newfound sense of hope. She knew that the challenges ahead would not be easy, but with Jake by her side, she felt ready to face anything. And for the first time, she allowed herself to think beyond revenge, to think about the future, about life, and about love. A future where courage, trust, and partnership would guide her. And in that moment, she knew that whatever came next, she would not face it alone. After the confrontation with Marcus, life in Dusty Creek slowly returned to a sense of peace. Clara and Jake had successfully reclaimed her family's land, secured the evidence, and restored her family's honor. The town, which had once looked down on her family for their modest means, now treated them with respect. Clara felt a deep sense of relief and accomplishment. The weight that had been pressing on her heart for years, the anger and desire for revenge, had finally been lifted. Despite the victory, Clara and Jake knew that their journey was not just about reclaiming land or defeating Marcus. It was about rebuilding lives, creating trust, and finding happiness in a world that had often been unfair. They worked together to repair the farm, tending to the fields, fixing fences, and caring for the animals. Every day was filled with purpose, but also with a sense of joy. Clara noticed how naturally they worked as a team, their movements and decisions in perfect harmony. Jake's calm strength complemented her intelligence and determination. Together, they made the farm thrive once more. As the weeks passed, Clara began to notice how much she relied on Jake, not just for help with the farm, but for guidance, comfort, and companionship. She admired his patience with the animals, his careful planning for the day's work, and his quiet ways of making her feel supported. She realized that she no longer thought of him only as a helper in her quest for revenge. He had become her partner in every sense of the word. Jake, too, felt a growing affection for Clara. He had always respected her courage and cleverness, but he now admired her kindness, her dedication to her family, and the strength with which she faced life's challenges. He found himself thinking of her when he was away on errands, wondering what she was doing and hoping she was safe. He had traveled alone for so long that he had forgotten what it meant to care for someone so deeply. Clara had reminded him of the warmth and companionship that life could offer. One afternoon, after a long day of work in the fields, Clara and Jake sat under a large oak tree near the farmhouse, watching the sun dip below the hills. The sky was painted with shades of orange and purple, and the air was calm and cool. Clara sighed, leaning back against the tree trunk. "It feels strange," she said quietly, "to finally have peace. I spent so long planning revenge that I forgot what it felt like to just live." Jake smiled, his eyes warm. "Sometimes the best victories are not the ones we fight for with anger, but the ones we fight for with courage and patience. You've proven that, Clara, and now it's time to enjoy it." Clara looked at him, feeling a mixture of gratitude, admiration, and something she could no longer ignore. "Jake," she began softly, "I couldn't have done any of this without you. You were there when I was afraid, when I doubted myself, and when everything seemed impossible." I think I've realized something." Jake reached out, taking her hand gently. "What is it?" he asked, his voice calm but full of care. Clara's heart raced, but she spoke with honesty. I care for you, Jake, not just because of what we did, but because of who you are. You've become important to me. I can't imagine facing life without you by my side." Jake's lips curved into a soft smile. "I feel the same way, Clara. You've shown me strength, courage, and kindness. You've reminded me what it means to care for someone, to trust someone, and to build a life together. I don't want to face the future without you." In that quiet moment, surrounded by the beauty of Dusty Creek, they shared their first tender embrace. The world felt still, as if it were acknowledging the bond that had grown between them through danger, trust, and shared purpose. Clara felt a sense of happiness she had never known. She had not only achieved justice for her family, but had also found someone who would walk beside her through every challenge life might bring. Over the following months, their life together settled into a comfortable rhythm. Clara managed the farm with confidence. Jake helped wherever needed, and the two of them worked side by side, always supporting one another. The townspeople came to know Jake not just as a wandering cowboy, but as a loyal, trustworthy man who had helped restore justice. He earned their respect, but more importantly, he earned Clara's love. Clara also found joy in the small moments, tending to the garden, feeding the chickens, and preparing meals together. She laughed more freely now, sharing stories with Jake, telling him about her dreams for the farm and the future. Jake, in turn, shared tales of his travels, his hopes, and even the silly mistakes he had made along the way. Together, they built a life filled with both hard work and simple pleasures. One evening, as the stars began to shine in the clear sky, Clara and Jake sat on the porch, watching the soft glow of lanterns from neighboring homes. Clara leaned her head on Jake's shoulder. "I never thought I'd find someone like you," she said softly. "Someone who understands me, who stands by me, and who cares for me without expecting anything in return." Jake squeezed her hand gently. "I never thought I'd find someone like you either. You've changed my life, Clara. You've taught me courage, patience, and what it means to fight for what truly matters. I promise you I'll be by your side, no matter what comes next." As the seasons passed, Clara and Jake continued to strengthen both the farm and their bond. They planted new crops, repaired old buildings, and helped neighbors when needed. The farm flourished, becoming a symbol of resilience and teamwork. But more importantly, their relationship flourished. They trusted each other completely, shared their dreams openly, and faced challenges together with unwavering support. One morning, as the sun rose over the fields, Clara turned to Jake with a thoughtful expression. "You know," she said, "life is different now. Marcus is gone, the farm is secure, and the town respects us. But the most important thing I've gained is you." Jake smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "And you've given me something I never thought I'd have, a home, a partner, and someone to love. We've faced danger together, and we've grown stronger together. That's worth more than anything else." Over time, their love deepened, and the idea of marriage naturally grew between them. It was not a promise made in anger, obligation, or revenge, but a promise born of trust, respect, and genuine affection. The townspeople celebrated with them, witnessing the union of two people who had not only faced life's challenges, but had grown stronger and closer because of them. The wedding was simple but beautiful, held on the farm under the shade of the large oak tree where they had first shared quiet conversations. Friends and neighbors gathered to celebrate their love, offering blessings and gifts, and sharing in the joy that Clara and Jake had created together. The air was filled with laughter, music, and the quiet warmth of happiness. As they stood together, holding hands and looking into each other's eyes, Clara felt a sense of completion. The journey that had begun with anger, injustice, and the desire for revenge had led to something far more meaningful: love, partnership, and a life built on mutual respect. Jake, too, felt a profound sense of fulfillment, knowing that he had found not only a partner but a true companion who shared his values, his dreams, and his courage. Life continued peacefully after the wedding. The farm thrived, the town respected their hard work, and Clara and Jake built a life filled with both challenges and triumphs. Every day was a reminder of what they had achieved together, the victory over injustice, the strength of their partnership, and the depth of their love. In quiet moments, Clara would look at Jake while he worked with the animals or repaired a fence, and she would feel a surge of gratitude and love. She realized that true happiness did not come from revenge, wealth, or recognition, but from the bonds we create, the trust we build, and the love we share. And Jake would look at Clara while she tended the garden or organized the farm work, and he would feel a sense of wonder. He had traveled for so long, searching for a place to belong, and now he had found not only a home but a partner who made life richer, fuller, and meaningful. Together, they faced the world with courage, patience, and love. Years passed, and Clara and Jake remained side by side, their bond growing stronger with every challenge and triumph. They faced hardships, weathered storms, and celebrated victories together. And through it all, they never lost the sense of partnership and trust that had brought them together in the first place. In the evenings, they would often sit by the porch, watching the sun set over the fields, remembering the journey that had brought them here, the danger, the planning, the victories, and the moments of quiet connection. They had grown together, and in each other, they had found not only love but a lifelong companion. Clara often reflected on her journey, realizing that revenge had been the spark that set everything in motion, but it was trust, courage, and love that had brought lasting fulfillment. She had learned that strength came not only from planning and action, but also from opening one's heart to trust and partnership. And Jake, who had wandered so long, finally understood that life's greatest reward was not travel, adventure, or even victory over enemies, but finding someone to share the journey with, a partner who stood beside you through danger, joy, and the quiet moments in between. Together, Clara and Jake lived a life full of purpose, love, and happiness. Their story became a quiet legend in Dusty Creek, a tale of courage, cleverness, and the enduring power of trust and love. They had faced the worst of challenges and had emerged stronger, wiser, and united, bound not by revenge, but by a promise of loyalty, partnership, and love that would last until the end of time.